Okay, good evening, and thank you for having us. My name is Nancy Turner. I'm a member of Indivisible Naperville. I'm also a member of DuPage Township, and I am here along with Barb O'Mara, who is also an Indivisible Naperville member, but she's in Lisle Township. We are here to ask the questions in an impartial manner. So for county board, I do not live in the 11th district. That district is now going to be the 10th, so I can be impartial there. The state senate and the judicial races, I think I can ask those. Although I think that the 43rd is now going to include part of Naperville. So if you prefer that I don't ask those questions, then Barb can answer those. So here's Barb.
All right, as she said, we're both with Indivisible Naperville, and I was drafted this afternoon to show up because our illustrious leader developed COVID a few days ago, and she was going to be here to handle the moderation for you. And right now she's at urgent care. I'm like, just go take care of yourself. Nancy can handle it. And she said, no, somebody should be with Nancy. And I said, okay. So we'll take turns jumping up here and asking the questions. And hopefully we will learn a lot about the candidates tonight, and you'll be more informed than you were when you walked in. Are you ready, Barbara? All right. So I know that we reached out to both of the state senate candidates, and Rachel has shown up tonight to be grilled. No, we don't grill people. We're here for information. And so I'm going to handle this questioning just because.
Is Rachel going to give an introduction?
No, probably not. I always forget my place, and Rachel's going to give her 2 or 3 minute introduction of herself, and then then Rachel and I'll have a conversation. All right.
Sounds good. So I'm going to have a constant theme throughout the answering, I think, and that is why I'm running, who I am, and why I'm qualified. And that is I come with the experience, I come with the heart, and I come with the integrity. And I think all of these are super important in Springfield right now, especially in light of some of the indictments and bribery charges and everything else that's happening down there. So the experience. My name is Rachel Ventura. I'm a Will County board member. I'm also the vice president of the Forest Preserve. I serve on 2 other boards as well, the Nature Foundation and the Heritage Corridor Board. This is important because it gives me a wide breadth of experience as a legislator. I am also experienced as a community member. I've been an activist, I've been an advocate for our climate, mostly, but also women's rights. And so I come with me prepared to legislate, to look at the law where things are working and where things are not working. And working families in the middle class right now are really hurting in this country, as well as in our state. And so we need to do what we can to make sure that our policies are helping everybody and not just the wealthy few or the politically connected. And that is the system we have had for a long time, and it's time that we change that. As far as the heart, I have a lot of empathy. I have had the pleasure of living in several different states. I was born and raised here, but I was married to a military man for 10 years, and we lived in several states, which allowed me to meet a lot of people. I've lived in different economic aspects of my own life, everything from being raised in poverty and having my own money. So I understand when things are working well, when you have disposable income, and when they're not. I've had to make choices of paying the electric bill or sending my kids on a field trip. And those are hard choices to make. And no family should have to make some of those choices. When I moved back here in 2016, I was upset at the trash in literally in our trees, and litter in our streets and our roads being crumbling. I know we can do better. I care about this planet. I care about the people who live on it. I've heard stories from people who are struggling with substance abuse and how they've overcome that and how these government policies can help them. I want to make sure that we have mental health services, substance abuse programs, domestic violence programs for anyone who needs it, and so much more. Job training. That is probably the bread and butter of what is happening right now in our country is the economy. And the last thing I want to touch on is integrity. I have the integrity. I'm honest, probably to a fault, but also just as Donald Trump gave permission to people to be hateful and nasty in this country when he was a leader, our leaders have the ability to give permission to people to be good and honest. And that is much harder to do than it is to be nasty. And I will be good and honest and I will treat people with respect, even people I don't agree with or people who have tried to harm me. I will show up, I will be professional, and I will be respectful. And if there's one thing we need in this country right now, it is respect. Respect of boundaries, respect of each other, respect of culture and race and religion and so many other things that founded this country. I will give you that, and that is a promise I will give you. So heart, integrity, and experience.
Thank you. And we're going to start off because in Will County, there is a lot of warehouse expansion. And what's your position on unchecked warehouse expansion? And explain, I mean, isn't this just a local matter rather than what would be dealt with at the state?
So this is not just a local matter, and I'll tell you why. 63% of every product that's shipped in the United States goes through Will County. That's 3.65% of our GDP. So this is a entire county problem, county and country. Right now there is an expansion called the North Point. And so up here, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's 6 times the size of O'Hare. It is definitely unchecked warehouse expansion. And some of the problems that these warehouse expansions have is the pollution, air pollution. They use up a lot of our water, our aquifers running dry in Joliet, as well as tearing up our roads, adding a tax burden to especially local taxpayers, but then these trucks go on our freeways and our county roads, so it becomes, a state issue. They're driving over the I&M Canal bridges, which are state-owned, breaking those on a regular basis. And then they have low wages. So these poverty wages are ultimately subsidized by the taxpayer, whether it's in housing subsidies, food subsidies, mental health treatment, health care, and the like. So what we need to make sure we're doing in Illinois is we need to make sure that we are attracting good paying jobs. And that is definitely a statewide issue. We're barely, we're $11 an hour now, maybe going to be $12 this summer. But the reality is in Will County, you need $26 an hour to not be housing burdened. And we have done study after study that shows this. The rest of the state is also suffering. By the time we get to $15 an hour, it will be a joke. We need to make sure that we are encouraging companies to come here that pay well above that, and if need be, increase the minimum wage. We also need to make sure our state is prepared to bring these companies on. So one good thing that we passed last year was the REV Act, which encouraged companies to come here that had renewable energy cars, as well as charging stations, and especially bringing these type of facilities and manufacturing companies to our areas that have the lowest economic impact right now, trying to close the wealth gap. We need to continue to create policies like that and incentivize companies like that. The warehouses are not it. Now, if we want to mandate minimum wages and limiting the temp agencies, then yes, but the economy is so important. And when we're bringing poverty jobs here and we're allowing these companies to exploit wages, exploit people, our environment, we all hurt. So I think that there's a lot the state can do. There's a lot of things that local government can do, but ultimately these are all not outside each other. They all impact one another. And when we start bringing good paying jobs here, we can change a lot of that.
Okay, thank you. That leads right into the next question, which is what will those good paying jobs look like that don't necessarily require a college degree? But we have been seeing manufacturing decline in Illinois over the years, and it's declined even some more this year. And a lot of that is due to automation, taking the jobs, with the worker shortages that we've seen. A lot of that is being replaced by automation. So my question is, can you be, I guess, a little more specific on what these good paying jobs are going to look like that don't require college and maybe are not in manufacturing?
Yeah, so the jobs of the future are going to be our green jobs. So we talked a little bit about the REV Act bringing in electric vehicles. Our state's done that pretty well. We need to continue to expand on that. We brought in Rivian, and they do the electric trucks, and then we brought in Lion Electric, which does electric buses. And we need to continue to expand that. Many of those electric buses will not be used in the state of Illinois because they have a long list, a waiting list, and other states have already bought these buses up. So we need to expand companies like that so that even our own state can take advantage of this. But it's not just transportation. Most of our energy loss is in our heating and cooling. So rehabbing houses and businesses is definitely a way to go. Currently, we have CPACE in our county, which allows for funding of businesses to make their businesses more energy efficient by basically borrowing from their own equity and paying it back. It's a federal program. I think we should expand that to residents so residents can make their homes more energy efficient. What does that mean? That means labor jobs, right? So whether you're saving on water, saving on energy and heat, you're going to need pipe fitters, you're going to need carpenters, you need so many other electricians to help make sure that we're moving into a new world, and that means a green world. Outside of those type of jobs, I think that we need to offer a public broadband option. This would also be very competitive. So if you think of like the post office, you're going to have FedEx and UPS and the United States Postal Service. We need to have the same thing for our internet. We have your AT&T, your Comcast, and then you have your public option. This will make sure that we have competitive pricing, so either lower internet or better quality, or hopefully both. And then you get to choose which of those you have. That's going to incentivize businesses to come here. When we have internet access anywhere in our state, whether you're in rural, whether you're in urban, it allows kids to get the education they need, it allows businesses to offer work at home options. There is a lot of federal dollars right now in the ARPA plan that is specifically earmarked for broadband. So we can either use our tax dollars and give them away to these companies that then charge you for their services, or we can use our own tax dollars to create a system that allows everyone to benefit by good internet. We know that this is the next utility. So just like people here don't like to pay the private companies for the water, do we want to keep paying private companies for our internet? I say no. So I think those two big things are the things that can help us move towards green jobs and more competitive manufacturing.
Being an adjunct in environmental biology, it's funny when you talk about the heat loss, because when you explain to students that 30-some% of your gas mileage goes off in heat, and that's what's costing you so much to run your cars, they don't understand that. But it is heat, and it's trying to figure out how to keep that heat, and it was an excellent point, Rachel. So our next one is, do you support women's right to make decisions about her body, whatever that may be, and why? Would you have voted to repeal the Parental Notification Act, the PNA, and why or why not?
Yeah, I'm definitely an advocate for women's rights, and I would have repealed that. I think that everybody needs the autonomy of their own body, and that's not limited to just women. In the beginning, when I talked about respect, whether we're respecting a man's body, a woman's body, or a trans body, they need to make the decision for themselves. Our government needs to not make that decision. I will say furthermore that I know my opponent has put out that he's the pro-choice candidate, but the truth is that I've been endorsed by Planned Parenthood, Action PAC, Personal PAC, Vote Pro-Choice, a National Organization of Women, and Equality Illinois. And the reason I was endorsed by these organizations is because I have put the legwork in. I have fought for women's rights. I have rallied. I have fundraised. I have been out there advocating for this. And when it's not popular and in states I lived in where it was not popular, I still was out there doing that. I have helped women get the reproduction help that they needed, and I wouldn't hesitate to do it again. I think that it's not enough to say that you won't stand between a woman and her doctor. It's time that we have people who are going to fight for this. We see that the Republicans will take no hesitation to remove every right that we have. And we need to have someone who is going to be tough as nails fighting for it, protecting it. And it is time that we open up our Constitution and make this a constitutional right, that the women have the right to their own body. And then furthermore, these states who are losing those rights, we need to have empathy for them. And whether that's working with organizations in those states to bring money into our states so that we can fund reproductive health medicine, after the day after pill, things like that, then we need to make sure that we're providing for that. There are going to be women who flock to our state to get the help that they need, and we need to be there for them. And we need to find a way to fund that so that everybody has the right of their own body.
Okay, Governor Pritzker recently signed the bill that bans the ghost guns in Illinois. And so furthermore, do you think that Illinois should ban assault weapons, high-capacity magazines, and bump stocks? Why or why not? And how, on a practical level, could that happen, since 60% of the guns that are recovered in Illinois come from out of state? So if Illinois bans assault weapons, is it just as likely that we're they're gonna come from Indiana or something like that.
Yeah, so I was very glad that Pritzker signed the ghost ban. I am also endorsed by the Gun Safety Prevention PAC. I think it says it all. I think Jackie and I was talking, 48 minutes, those officers stood outside not wanting to go in because an assault rifle was being used. When our own police force and sheriffs do not want to go in front of these weapons, then why are they not banned? I mean, that's the question we have to ask ourselves. This isn't about your Second Amendment right. I am a FOID card carrier. I was on the rifle team in JRTC. I can shoot an M16 and have shot an M16 as well as single bolt 22 rifle. So this is not about, anti-gun. That's the furthest from it. What we need to do is make sure we have good legislation. Before I could ever shoot a rifle, I had to learn all the safety protections. I had to learn the law. I had to learn how to clean it, and I had to also learn how to shoot it. We do the same thing when we drive a car. There is no reason we should not be legislating that at the state level, that you have to take a number of classes to learn how to do all those things. And even if you only shoot the gun one time, you gotta learn how to shoot that gun. You've gotta learn the law. So if someone steals your gun, or if you're an adult and your child takes your gun and commits murder, what are the ramifications of that? And are you willing to have that? That might mean people start locking their guns up a lot more when we change some of these laws. A lot of this stuff is common sense. And during this process where they're going to a class, you can have a counselor sitting in that room observing people, and then have a live one-on-one interview with that person, a mental health counselor, to make sure that they are safe for themselves and others to get that weapon. And if they're not, that they have counseling services right there. Because as heartbreaking as it is when children die and are murdered, most of our gun deaths are still middle-aged men committing suicide, which tells us, yes, we know it's a mental health problem, so we need to provide the funding for that, make sure we have aspects for them to get the help they need, make sure they know that anyone who wants a gun knows the law, knows how to shoot it, knows how to protect their weapons, and that way, hopefully, we can start moving towards a society that isn't watching this and becoming numb night after night as there's mass murder. So there's a lot that we can do, and we need to start walking that path and having other states do it too, and we need to lobby our federal government to get involved in this as well.
All right. The next question, as it was written, is, do you believe our current criminal justice system disproportionately impacts certain communities? And I think the obvious answer is yes.
Yes.
The question, yeah, badly written
Who wrote
question. But, so my question to you is, how can we impact that so that we're not disproportionately going against certain communities?
Right. So I would say there's two things that are going on here. One is making sure that people have the means to a quality life. We know that 79% of all crimes committed are ones of necessity. So when we don't provide for whole communities to not have good education and good jobs, then we're closing doors to them left and right, and that's not fair. The other aspect of this is enforcement, right? And we did pass a law last year to help hold police accountable, so if there is abuse of power, that is being changed. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of this stuff goes back to our economy. When people have the ability to get the jobs that they like and have enough money, they choose to use their time with their family, with their friends, with their hobbies. They're no different than everybody else in this room. Criminals are just like us. But at the end of the day, those doors have been closed to them, and they've made some unfortunate choices. And we need to make sure that they have a pathway back to society, to a functioning society, and that we're not overly penalizing whether it's youth, people of color, people who are poverty, right? We know that those are more stumbling blocks are put in front of those communities than anyone else. And once they have a pathway to going back to society, we need to support those efforts. Locking people up and throwing away the key is not the option, especially on some of these nonviolent offenses. In Will County, we have a couple of specialty courts. Chicago has, I think, 17 specialty courts. We have 3 in our county. We need to have more courts like that, where at the end of the day, you're not getting a record. You're getting the resources and help you need to get back to working, to housing, to mental health services, to a supportive network. I'd like to see this expanded so that people can get the help they need, and make sure that we have one-on-one counseling services even in jail, and get rid of some of the solitary confinement, which we know is extremely cruel and not productive towards people in their healing process. So I'd like to see some of those things happen. I'd like to make sure we're holding anyone who abuses power accountable. We've yet to see the full impact of the crime bill, to see some of the recordings. Every officer has to wear a recording device now, lifting cash bail, which, I think is a good thing. So once we've seen some of the impacts of that, we will know what needs to be fixed at that point and what doesn't, but we do have a long way to go.
What do you believe are reasonable remedies to address rising hate crimes and incidents in our communities?
I talked about it at the beginning. I think one of the first things we need to do is make sure we have leaders who are walking that path and encouraging others to do the same. When we encourage hate and divisiveness, the outcome is people act on that hate and divisiveness, and we do see that in crime and other acts of violence. So, there's no one fit answer on this one. Everybody who decides to do an act of violence has all of their own personal reasons, and so there could be 1,000 different answers to this. But at the end of the day, I really truly believe that this is a society issue. We all have to do our part, not just elected officials, but every one of us has to choose that moment, whether you're on Facebook and you're getting ready to blow somebody up, or just scrolling and walking away, right? And saying, you know what, I'm gonna choose forgiveness, I'm gonna choose silence, and not silence for complicity, I mean not going off on someone, right? Respect. And then find a moment when you have reflected on it to come back with maybe a kinder answer. When we're stressed out, we tend to pop off. And I think that our entire society is pretty stressed out. Long before COVID happened, I think we were pretty stressed out. COVID has only made that boiling pot. And we're seeing that play out in teen suicides and more mass shootings, people quitting their jobs, and a lot of this has to come down to the fact that, we all could use a little healing and take that extra moment to treat others the way we want to be treated. And I think right now when we're stressed out, we forget sometimes how we want to be treated.
Would you support, or do you support, comprehensive sexual education, including LGBTQ, and specific health information in public schools, K through 12?
Yes, so like I said, I was endorsed by Equality Illinois for one of these reasons. I definitely support this. In fact, talking a little bit about education, I actually think that we should be teaching biology every year from kindergarten on up. And what do I mean by that? Mostly I mean anatomy. The one thing you have your entire life, no matter who you are, is your body. And you're stuck with it your whole life. But the one thing we learn very little about is your body. In fact, many people don't learn truly a full comprehensive look at it until they get to college and take anatomy, and most of those are doctors and nurses. And I think that that is a big loss to our society. Everything from the choices of what you eat or the medicines you put in your body, exercise, how rough you are, or how relaxed you are in your body. Those choices might be different if you understood a lot more about how it works. So from the very beginning in kindergarten, I think that we need to be identifying our parts, right? And even our personal parts, I think, are important. Identifying boundaries, identifying how things work. And then every year, you take a science class where you're not learning about cell division. You can still learn that in high school, that's no problem, but you're learning about your bones, and when you eat too much calcium, what does that do to your heart? And so many other things. Sugar, what happens when you eat sugar? We sprinkle this in our classrooms right now, and they might learn a little bit more in 4th grade, or a little bit more when they take a health class in 7th grade. No, we need to make sure that people are understanding their body every step of the way. I think that would really allow for a lot of different looks when it comes to people who are going through exploratory stages, or they're finding out who they are and what that means, even though society has maybe told them something very different. And then, of course, I want to make sure we have counseling services available, mental health services available, because not every family supports someone's identity. And it's important for that, or sexual orientation, it's important for people to have that option to have a supportive network, even if their family doesn't support them.
Okay, one final question. If elected, what would be your first order of business and why?
I would love to have campaign finance reform. Talk about public financing. That's going to probably be a very long battle. There's so many things that the state needs to work on right now. I think, though, that something like that could have a permanent impact. So I don't take any corporate PAC dollars. I never have, never will. And this is important because too many of our lawmakers, I don't think they go in being bought and paid for. It ends up over time. You take a donation from here, you've got to bend to there. You're afraid to lose your supporters here who gave you a lot of money. And at the end of the day, you find yourself turning away from votes or not doing the thing that you know desperately needs to happen because you're afraid you might not get reelected. And this is not my quote, but I have stolen it and used it. It is not my job to say what is popular. It is my job to say what is right and make it popular. And I think that only happens when you are not bought and paid for. And so I think campaign finance reform is the #1 issue, but that will be a hard push. So I will be pushing for climate protections, women's protections, and making sure we have good paying jobs.
All right, we want to thank you for showing up tonight and giving your time. I think these type of forums for the people that show up are extremely beneficial and very useful, and it helps to make us think a little bit more and understand who's actually putting their names on the ballot.